infantry. They go through, start with the A, B, C, as you can imagine, as they're going through different variations of the tank. This L model has a 5cm or 50mm gun on it, and you can see again just the sheer scale of difference between this type of tank that started design in the mid-1930s, using some components that the Germans had been researching and testing in secret, allied to the Russians out of Kazan in Soviet Russia. They had real difficulties in the 1930s, the Germans, putting their two main types of tanks together. The Panzer III that we're seeing and the Panzer IV that was supposed to be an escort tank with a short barrel 7.5cm gun. Now, inevitably, with tanks like the Tiger, we have a myth of the German superiority of tank design. 1930s, that is just not the case. They're struggling to build tanks. They had the analysis of Tiger 131. They were up against something pretty serious when you're looking at a Tiger. Now, the L model has been followed around by another German vehicle, also captured in North Africa, also brought back for analysis, that weird little thing called the Kettenkrad, which was basically a tracked tractor that was put into service with the German army first. The Luftwaffe later used it. They were sometimes used for tugs, for pulling planes around airfields, etc. And it was actually considered a fairly popular vehicle. It looks a bit of an oddity. It's got a motorcycle wheel and handlebars at the front. They are not essential for it to actually steer and drive. You can actually use a steering wheel on it, as it were, and that will brake and turn the track as you're going along. So the Kettenkrad then, small cadre army would rapidly expand and start building vehicles which only 2, 3, 4 different types were being made in the 20s and 30s in very small numbers as test vehicles, so that when a war came, they knew what they wanted. Now, the M3 Grand tank in the museum is the first tank the Americans made. The British use it. The M4 Sherman tank is a tank they want to use to go to war with. And this is an example of an M4 Sherman. Now, the original M4 Sherman has a 75mm gun, so size of the hole at the end of the barrel, 75mm. It has two types of hull, a cast hull in metal, which makes it an M4A1, or, like you can see here, a welded hull. And basically the letters that go after the M4A1, then it says things like or A2 or A3 or EA, engine they put in the back. And there's 4 types of engines in Shermans. Now this type of Sherman has a twin diesel engine made by General Motors in the back. Some of them had aeroplane engines. There was a variety. They simply couldn't make enough of one type of engine to fit all the Shermans, hence all these variations. Now, big way to think about numbers as well. 1,300 all told Tiger ones made by the Germans in the war, 50,000 Shermans made by the Americans. Shermans like this were also 1966. It was that effective. And you can see, look at the scale of it. It's tiny. It's going to be hard to see. The fact when it gets going, it's pretty quick. And it also means when you're quick and small, you're a hard target to hit by the enemy. Now, following is almost like the big brother of the scout car. This is the Daimler armoured car, the second vehicle going around with the turret on. So think of it as a souped-up dingo, Daimler engine in the back, and this time with a bit more punch. The idea of having that 2-pounder gun, there's two ways you might be able to do reconnaissance. One way is by stealth, that's a dingo, small, quiet, you're hardly going to be seen. The other way you can do reconnaissance is a way they sometimes call kicking the antique. Go and wake the enemy up, make them reveal their positions, give them a bit of a brassing up, as it was called, a bit of machine gun fire, make them fire back at you, make them have to reveal themselves. If you're going to do that, you want a bit more protection and probably a bit more firepower as well. And that's the idea using into the 60s and 70s. And the other thing about the Daimler armoured car, if I can see it, I don't know where it's hiding at the moment. The other thing about the Daimler armoured car, because of its reconnaissance role, they also realised, just like the dingo, it's going to have to back out quickly if it meets the enemy at the time. So with those vehicles, I mention them because it's an area, again, we always tend to talk about tanks. Actually, Britain was really good at wheeled armour in World War II, and these are vehicles that were the top of their class throughout the entire war. Now behind it, another armoured vehicle, the American half-track. Again, the Americans, in that period of experimentation in the 30s, they import a couple of French Crossley-Congress half-tracks, they have a look at them, they build a series of different types of half-track like this one. They're all given really confusingly, M1, M2, M3, M4, being this is a vehicle with the tracks. It means it can have more mobility than just a wheeled vehicle. And with those machine guns in the back, the idea was it was for close air defence. In other words, you were going to protect a column, your tanks, whatever else is advancing with those 450 caliber machine guns. Now, as most of you will know, if you know your World War II history, fairly shortly after the invasion in Normandy, most of the German air power was pretty impotent. We didn't pretty much anything. A 50 caliber round's pretty big. Having a bit of fun there with these smooth and silky gear changes you can hear. 55,000. So there's our dingo, there's our Daimler armoured car following up, and the American half-track, the M16 version there. Really vehicles that, part of the half-track was used for reconnaissance as well, just like our dingo here, and the Daimler behind it. It was also used as a troop carrier. So again, the idea, a bit like the Germans using the half-track as well, the 251 series of vehicles the Germans had in World War II, you put a section of infantry in the back under some sort of protection. The armour plate will stop bullets, not much else, but it means you can bring them forward with other vehicles like tanks, and the soldiers in the 60s, the Americans built one of the most movable vehicles of all time. The vehicle they built was the M113. It was an armoured personnel carrier used in Vietnam, used by the FMC, or built by the FMC, Food Manufacturing Corporation of America. At the moment, there are about 90,000 they've built over time. The turret on the top mounts a 50 caliber machine gun. There's 3 crew members in the vehicle, one inside to operate the radios, and the driver, you can see the first wave over the top, you sink like a stone. Now it's actually made of aluminium, which tries to keep the weight down, so it's sold on. So some of these now are serviced in Barbados, I think in South America. As it drives around you, the Russians after World War II built a tank called the T-72. They gave the plans to the Chinese. and the Chinese built a copy of it, and that's what this is. It's called a type tank. So a T-74 is a Russian tank or a Soviet-era tank. A type tank is the Chinese copy. So we call this a Type 59. Now in the Second World War, the Russians realised they wanted to build a more powerful tank than the T-34 with its 76mm gun on. And they come up with a design they called the T-44. But instead of putting it into mass production, which would have meant hand-shaped turret, Russian tanks were so used to. The T-54 is mass-produced, along with the T-55, about 80,000 they think has been made over time. Huge numbers of them, and made in many other factories, not just in Russia. So they were exported, licensed one. This is made in China, but it's even more confusing because it's got a British gun on. That's because Russian offered the L7 105mm gun if you wanted to upgrade your tank. And that's what on this particular vehicle is driving around now. And I mentioned earlier, so a lot of the time, tanks are in service a long time, and you can buy add-ons or improvements so it keeps it relevant and in service longer. And this particular in terms of a modern Western tank, but they're still going to do an awful lot of damage if you have to beat one and you're in a Land Rover, or you have got your best tank with you that day. That surprisingly, designed in 1960 by the Americans, tends to go into service about 1962. That's on the rear. The idea of a gun lock is when you're driving along, if you're not, you don't want to rip up the road. Rather than Revolution, it's called the patent family of tanks. They really start just after the war in 47, M48, then the M60. They look very similar. They're just getting bigger all the time, so their shapes are very similar, and again that helps with training the troops. So things such as the steering mechanisms are the same in both of these vehicles. You can see the commander, he's almost got his mini turret on the top, cupola or cupola, depending on how you say it. That's got a 50 caliber machine gun in. And again, so the commander can be looking around for targets. more Soviet Army tank coming on now. This is the T-72. And again, it's another one of those, we all think the communist era, the Soviet government were very disciplined, they were very command economy, almost like a dictatorship. Actually, like a rival factory in the Urals at a place called Nizhny Tagil decided they were going to build a rival to the T-64. And they were so good at doing it, even the Russian minister, when he went to visit saw it there, was going to tell them off for doing it, rivaling the T-64 tank. He then said, okay, do some experiments and we'll see about putting these into production. And that becomes this tank, the T-72. Now the engine's in the back of the T-72 and they use it, they put it across transversely. It's not in line with the track, it runs across the back of the engine bay. T-72 goes through a number of improvements, a number of different models. This is when it's hit by an incoming round, there's a sandwich of explosive between pieces of metal, triggers the sandwich to go off, and the blast effect goes back out. So it's great against things like charge round, things like RPGs or bazookas equivalent, but it also, with Contact 5, the latest version, it's also pretty good against particular version of the Warrior was it was mainly for carrying the troops, armoured infantry, into battle. This particular version is actually one that was used by an artillery observation officer. So the gun on it was actually a dummy, but they want them to all look the same, so you're not picked out as a target in particular. But the idea is they give it a really powerful engine. It was a starter motor for a destroyer, and it gives it that welly. This is a very fast vehicle, and the whole point of that is the faster you are getting to where you need to be, depositing the infantry, the safer those soldiers are going to be. So speed is part of your defence. Now the Warrior has a three-man crew, driver, two in the turret, commander and gunner. Driver, you can see, he's got his hatch open down. inside it, they deposit it, they run forward and finish the attack on foot. That's still the philosophy in the British Army, as it were. You've got that 30mm Rahm cannon being able to put down suppressing fire, or there's an MG machine gun or a chain gun next to it. The two tanks in service now. This is the T-71 coming on. To replace the G80. The problem is it had lots of technical problems and we weren't getting very far with it. Now the same people designed a tank for the Shah of Iran. He spent a huge amount of money up the road at Chertsey. He built special establishments. He designed you are, but that's not going to be it. Look at some of these tanks. Please wait till we call you out by colour coding. And again, if you don't mind, please wait so we can get you back in the museum or wherever you want to go by section, and we don't get you all bunching up and all the problems we've got, as I was saying earlier on, so you can keep your distance. So please, I know some of you might be anxious to get off, some of you are anxious to go and have a look at the vehicles. Please wait for us and take your time as you head off to wherever you're going to go around the big building or around the site.
Success! They've just taken a bow as well, so we'll put it all back together and then drive the tank off the arena. Thank you.
You're taking a left. Oh, well, all our sign people are there, right? I'll stay with the bag.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could stay in your places while the tanks are still moving, we can then, once they've exited the arena, we can start to move you through to the tank part. So if you just remain in your colour-coded zones, that would be really helpful for us. And keep your social distancing, please. Thank you.
Cold War Hall.